Hello everybody and welcome back to the Overlap Breakdown channel. Today we're here to cover Tottenham Hotspur's tactical masterclass as they beat Manchester City again 2-0. Okay, so jumping into the game of the Saturday, the early game of the Saturday, and we've just watched it in the office and sort of come away with a lot of conclusions from the game, and felt like after it a lot of people were saying, even on the commentary, that Spurs shouldn't get too excited about this result, but for me, I'm the complete opposite, to be honest, with that. So Spurs have obviously won 2 out of 2 games, 3-0, 2-0, no goals conceded, and 2 very good performances, and performances that, more importantly, sort of stipulate exactly what Thomas Frank's trying to do at Tottenham Hotspur, and that is play in multiple different ways from game to game, and also changing the way they play within the game. So they can play 30 minutes one style, another half another style, and that is what we've seen in this game against Manchester City. And now we did a full-on tactical breakdown of Thomas Frank to Tottenham Hotspur when he first got announced, and we went through sort of his entire tactical philosophy. And it might sound a little bit cliche, but everything we talked about being his main principles come through in this game against Manchester City. And that is more so the reason I want Tottenham fans to get excited by not only the win, but the actual overall performance from Thomas Frank. And we're going to go through both goals, and we're going to talk about how they're such good signs for Tottenham that they were able to execute sort of his ideas very early on. And we watched them against PSG, watched them against Burnley, and I've watched them against City, and we've seen sort of 3 different styles against all teams. Against PSG, they wanted to go along with the majority of goalkeeper kicks and sort of play off Richarlison using Kudus and bring them into play with Sarr up high winning the second balls. Burnley, they were a lot more brave. We've got Vicario stepping in, splitting the centre halves. And then against Manchester City, we've seen sort of a combination of both of them games in here. So we're going to move on straight away into how Tottenham sort of created their first goal. And what we noticed very early on for Thomas Frank's side is that they were trying to build very deep in this 4-2-4, which again is what we talked about massively on the channel when he first got announced to Tottenham. So he was going to play in this 4-2-4 with a 4 pinning high, and we actually had Pape Matar Sarr playing off the striker high. So what we're looking here to do in Thomas Frank's principles are attacking larger spaces. So if we're building up here, how fast can we get to this end of the pitch and create sort of them fast, clear-cut chances from that? We've seen it with his Brentford team when they went to the Etihad, when Ivan Toney scored a brace, I think. 1 or 2 of them goals, very much similar to this goal. So what we've got now is sort of Vicario, we've got Romero, Van de Ven, and they were playing down the sides. And now what Thomas Frank was looking to do, especially in the first half, is if we can push the build-up on, so we've say Vicario passes to him and he steps out with the ball here, we're looking to sort of entice the City pressure over to the right ball side. Now, what this actually means is Manchester City were using Nico Gonzalez as sort of the +1 in their pressing shape. So if they're pressing in this sort of 4-3-3, let's say, or 4-1-4-1, Nico Gonzalez isn't really responsible for a man. He's responsible for, organising space. But what happened is when the ball was worked sort of into this wide pocket with Pedro Porro, we then had a full sort of court City press pinning on this right-hand side. Now, Spurs' response to that was to do the exact same, which was to compact on the ball side. So what we had is sort of this here, which dragged Manchester City's shape over. Nico Gonzalez joined. And then we had Pape Matar Sarr. Now, I keep talking about it, but that piece again that we did on Thomas Frank to Spurs, we talked about how integral Sarr could be for this Tottenham team. And we've seen it again, both for the first and second goal. Ball comes down the line, it's flicked on, and Richarlison beats the offside trap. So what Manchester City were trying to do throughout this entire game, and Jamie Carragher even covered it on Monday Night Football in their opening fixture against Wolves, is Manchester City are almost trying to angle their body positioning on the halfway line so they can catch players offside, hence why it was called offside initially. So we've got this long ball into Sarr, the knockdown's built, and then Richarlison gets on the outside, in behind Manchester City's defence with the ball. Now what this now means is when City are retreating, we had Rico Lewis here, and we spoke about sort of the trademark runs that Thomas Frank's wide players like to make at Brentford, especially in Bumo, with these sort of sweeping outside to inside runs. We made it such a big thing that Johnson, Tell, players like that, Kudus now, are all players who sort of do this sort of movement. We've seen that from Brennan Johnson, but more narrow. And Rico Lewis didn't check his blind side. Brennan Johnson gets to the goal before Rico Lewis is able to retreat. And it's a Richarlison knockback for a Brennan Johnson finish, which he actually took really well. And I think just overall, we mentioned sort of how can we build up deep, but then still attack larger spaces? How can we take advantage of big spaces that Manchester City leave for oppositions? How can we take advantage of that? How can we take advantage of Manchester City's offside trapping? How can we get Pape Matar Sarr closer to the ball to win them first and second balls and then accelerate with our play? But can we play direct, but also be comfortable enough to play deep? From time and time again throughout the game for Vicario, he's playing really, really comfortable deep possession. We mentioned that Ange Postecoglou sort of, influence on his brain is that he's now comfortable doing the deep build-up. Asking Spurs to build up deep isn't something that's like a massive task for them to do. You're not going to, I don't know, a West Ham and saying, can we build up in the 6-yard box? We're going to a team who's already done it. But what this meant is they were comfortable in doing that. And because they're so comfortable here and they've been trained for years now in doing this, it meant they could lower that press on. But then can we combine it with Thomas Frank's philosophy of attacking larger spaces, getting runs in behind? Can we do the outside to inside with Brennan Johnson? And I thought from a Tottenham Hotspur perspective, everything about this first goal was absolutely brilliant from a Frank identity standpoint. And we're going to move on into the second goal now, but I really want to drill home that Tottenham fans should be very excited because we've seen so much of Frank's philosophy already in the early days. And I think they've gone to the Etihad. And I know a lot of people were maybe not saying City should win the title, but after Wolves, a lot of people were bigging City up. So this is not a small result for Tottenham Hotspur.
If you're enjoying the video and want more tactical analysis and podcasts, please press the subscribe button below and hit the bell to enable post notifications.
Okay, now moving on into Tottenham's second goal, which I think a lot of people have put down to James Trafford's mistake in sort of playing this pass a little bit too square and catching out, the pivot who lost the ball. But I want to touch on sort of Tottenham's overall idea in the press, not just for the goal, but throughout the game. And what we have is sort of this. We've seen it against PSG, but they played a 5-back and they went 5-2-1-2. And the one was Sarr, who again, we want to speak about how integral he is from a manager perspective, off the ball, back pressing and winning the ball back high. If he is on the back and he's in behind Johnson and Richarlison, who are leading that press, so as soon as the ball is played, I think Richarlison makes this somewhat curved run to lock off that side, which means James Trafford has got a decision to make, which is, can we play there? But Brennan Johnson's obviously stepped out. Or can we try and, feed the ball through the pivot? I think Cherki actually drops in a little bit deeper here, and I thought he could have played this pass maybe squarer here. But what happens is he receives here, Sarr jumps, and then turns the ball over high, and then there's somewhat of a scrap in the box for the ball that Spurs then turn into a goal. Now, a big thing about the game that I was noticing was that overall, if we actually just push it a little bit further back, so let's say Manchester City have got past the goalkeeper and they've actually built out a little bit more against Spurs. So we've got sort of everyone's pushed up now, the centre-halves have sort of won the ball. We've still got Sarr, Richarlison, Johnson like this. What I was noticing from City a lot in this game was they were trying to have sort of a box midfield constantly in there. So this meant that Rico Lewis was actually coming in really narrow and that Ryan Cherki was actually causing a lot of problems sort of in this space, moving fluidly. Now, that meant that when City were on the ball, a lot of people were, slotting down the outsides like this, and it meant that Spurs had to go full court press. And there were a lot of times in the game where we've seen Bentancur, Palhinha, Sarr, everyone sort of full box pressing them. And we ended up in situations sort of with Spurs like this, where we had Haaland, Marmoush, Bob, and it felt like the obvious answer for City was to go long from James Trafford and use Haaland in these pockets. I think Haaland actually got very frustrated in the first half because he was dropping a lot deeper for the ball, and he actually played that lovely pass through to Marmoush for the biggest chance that City actually had in the game. But yeah, I just felt this was really, really brave from Tottenham. We're going 3v3 across the entire defence, but I also felt that City could have done so much more with James Trafford using Haaland as that focal point. And I'm pretty sure with a keeper maybe like Ederson, Ortega, who were a bit more, well drilled into this City team, I'm not sure Pep Guardiola would have wanted James Trafford to play that dangerously in his own 18-yard box. I think having a player like Erling Haaland with Bob and Marmoush running off him, there was a lot of potential to play that ball a little bit quicker, a little bit more direct into Haaland, especially when Spurs were pressing up entirely through the midfield. But that never really happened. And what we actually seen was in the first half when Rico Lewis was moving inside, we saw Jed Spence actually following him very, very narrow into the pitch. And it meant that when Oscar Bob was dropping in here to pick the ball up, it was Van de Ven who was often all the way up in left wing positions to back press and to push the ball backwards. And in the second half, we see much more of a, I'm not going to say a deeper Tottenham, but they had less of the ball and they wanted to, defend the lead. But in the first half, I think there was actually a moment sort of in the 45th minute where obviously Van de Ven's tracked Oscar Bob all the way down here. I think Oscar Bob's passed it back to James Trafford and he's actually followed through the press and gone to close down Trafford with the ball. And I think that idea from Thomas Frank that can we press high in moments? Can we try and win the ball high in moments? But then can we fall back once we want to defend the lead and the game gets a bit tighter? But overall, from a Tottenham perspective in this game, I thought they were utterly brilliant. I thought City could have scored. I thought they made a couple decent chances. But I think both the centre-halves, I think Jed Spence was absolutely brilliant today again. Sarr, Richarlison playing as that, that man. I thought Kudus, the ball sticks so well to Kudus. If we're going long into him, sort of his ability to bounce off players and bring the ball inside, I just think it looks really good. And it's been a tough week for Tottenham, tough month really for Tottenham in terms of the off-pitch stuff. Obviously the Eze and Morgan Gibbs-White things happened. And I think we mentioned in the video that we did on him once again that I don't really think that Spurs need that much right now from the transfer market. I think they do need to invest. I think they do need more of a ball-playing midfielder, but I thought Bentancur, again, was good in this game. But I think they need someone who can do that James Maddison role, which is sinking a little bit deeper and taking the ball. But apart from that, they don't really have to change too much in this game, in this team for me, to let Frank succeed. I think fixture congestion will definitely play a part. But we're 2 games into the Premier League season and we've already seen sort of every core principle from Thomas Frank. We've seen the set pieces, we've seen the long throws, we've seen the direct attack in big spaces, we've seen the outside to inside runs from Brennan Johnson, we've seen them build up deep in the box and have the bravery to sort of entice the press and then go. It's all there. I think the quality aside, Frank's started off his Tottenham job like unbelievably, and you can call it new manager bounce whatsoever, whatever, but yeah, I've just been really impressed with what I've seen from Tottenham since the season started, albeit we're only 2 games in. But yeah, I think people who are telling Tottenham fans to maybe calm down and not get the hopes up and maybe Manchester City weren't as good as they have been today, I think Spurs deserve a lot of credit for stopping Manchester City play. And I think throughout the game, it felt like a very different Tottenham team that we were watching. It never really felt like they were going to capitulate at sort of any moment. So yeah, absolutely brilliant from Thomas Frank and Tottenham Hotspur today. And honestly, one of probably the best sort of tactical performance I've seen already in the season for me, because I think having the courage to go there, play deep in your own box against a high press, score 2 goals, defend the lead well, I think Tottenham fans should be truly, truly very, very happy with this performance and sort of the early signs under Thomas Frank. Thank you very much for watching. If you did enjoy, please don't forget to like, comment and follow the channel and let us know what you've made of Thomas Frank's start at Tottenham. And we'll be back next week for some more analysis. Thank you.